I watched my sister's hand freeze over my jewelry box, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling as they hovered above the empty velvet compartments where my vintage hair clips used to live. The look on her face, that mixture of confusion, rage, and dawning horror, was almost worth dying for. Almost. "Where are they?" Melissa's voice cracked, her usual sugary tone replaced by something raw and desperate. "Where are all your hair accessories, Claire? The diamond pins, the pearl combs, the—" "Gone," I said simply, running my hand over my buzzed scalp. The stubble felt strange under my palm, liberating in a way I hadn't expected. "All gone. Donated them yesterday to the Children's Hospital charity auction. Got a nice tax write-off, actually." Her face went white. Not pale. White. Like someone had literally drained the blood from her features. You can't have. The Cartier clips, the vintage Chanel, those were—" "Mine," I interrupted, my voice calm and cold. "They were mine, Melissa, every single one, and now they're gone." She grabbed my shoulders, her nails digging into my skin through my thin t-shirt. "Claire, you don't understand. The interview, it's today. Channel 5 is coming to the house in 3 hours to film the feature on Seattle's rising social media star, and I need those accessories. My whole look depends on them." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since I'd woken up on my 20th birthday, 8 months in the past, with 21 years of memories flooding back into my consciousness. Memories of a life I'd already lived, a life that had ended with me cold and alone in a psychiatric facility, destroyed by the very person now shaking me and begging. "Figure it out," I said, pulling away from her grip. "You're so creative after all. That's what Channel 5 thinks, right? That you're this brilliant, self-made influencer who built her empire from nothing?" The irony wasn't lost on either of us. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started, or rather, where it ended the first time around. In my first life, I died on March 15th, 3 months after my 21st birthday, in a state-run psychiatric facility where my family had me committed. The official cause was suicide, an overdose of the medications they'd been forcing down my throat for 6 months. But I knew the truth even as the darkness closed in. I knew what they'd done to me, what they'd taken, and how systematically they'd destroyed every piece of who I was. It started small, the way abuse always does. I was 7 when Melissa was born, and from the moment Mom brought her home from the hospital, something shifted in our house. Dad, who used to call me his little genius and spend Saturday mornings teaching me chess, suddenly had no time. Mom, who used to braid my hair every night and tell me stories, was always too tired, always too busy with the baby. "Claire, be a good big sister and help with Melissa." "Claire, keep it down, the baby is sleeping." "Claire, why can't you be more understanding? Your sister needs us right now." I understood. I was a good big sister. I helped change diapers and made bottles and gave up my room so Melissa could have the bigger one with the window seat I'd always loved. I was patient when she cried through the night and understanding when Mom missed my school plays because Melissa had a cold, but it never stopped. As Melissa grew, the requests became demands. "Share your toys, give her your jacket, she's cold, let her wear your new dress to the party." "Why are you being so selfish, Claire? Don't you love your sister?" I did love her. That was the cruelest part. Even as she took and took and took, I loved her because I didn't know any different. I thought this was what family meant. Sacrifice, compromise, putting others first. I thought if I just gave enough, eventually there would be enough left for me, too. I was wrong. The hair clips started when I was 16 and she was 9. I'd saved up for 6 months, working after school at the local library to buy myself a set of vintage hair accessories from an estate sale. They were beautiful, genuine 1950s pieces with delicate pearl inlays and tiny crystals that caught the light. They'd belonged to a woman named Dorothy who'd been a dancer in New York, and somehow wearing them made me feel connected to something bigger than my small, suffocating world. Melissa saw them the day I brought them home, and her eyes lit up with that particular gleam I'd come to recognize, the one that meant she wanted something and would do whatever it took to get it. "Those are so pretty, Claire. Can I try them on?" "Maybe when you're older," I said, trying to be gentle. They're really delicate and you're so selfish. She'd run to Mom, tears already streaming down her face. Claire won't let me even touch her precious clips. She hates me. That night, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. She's just a little girl, Claire. Would it kill you to share? You know how sensitive she is. Do you want her to feel like she doesn't belong in this family? The guilt was a familiar weight in my chest. The next morning, I told Melissa she could borrow one clip for her school picture day. She beamed, hugged me, promised to be so careful. She lost it on the playground. I'm so sorry, Claire, she sobbed, and she seemed genuinely distraught. I'll replace it, I promise. I'll save my allowance and… She never did. But that was okay, I told myself. It was just one clip, and she was only 9. These things happened. Except they kept happening. Over the next 5 years, borrowing became Melissa's favorite hobby. She'd slip into my room when I wasn't there and help herself to whatever caught her eye. Hair accessories, jewelry, clothes, makeup. If I owned it and she wanted it, it eventually made its way into her possession. Sometimes she asked. More often, she didn't. Mom and Dad always took her side. You have so many nice things, Claire. Why can't you share with your sister? Stop being so materialistic. They're just objects. Family is more important than things. Don't be so petty. But they weren't just things to me. They were the only pieces of myself I had left. Everything else, my time, my space, my parents' attention, had already been sacrificed on the altar of Melissa's needs. Those objects were the last tangible proof that I existed as a person, separate from my role as Melissa's supporting character. The real nightmare began when I was 19 and Melissa was 12. She'd just started a YouTube channel, Melissa's Magical Makeovers, and to everyone's surprise, it took off. Within 6 months, she had 100,000 subscribers. Within a year, 500,000. By the time she was 14, she had 2 million followers across various platforms and was making more money than both our parents combined. She was a prodigy, everyone said. A natural talent. So creative, so innovative, so original. I knew better. I'd been studying fashion design at community college, working on building a portfolio to transfer to the 4-year program. I'd spent 3 years developing my aesthetic, a blend of vintage elegance and modern minimalism that I documented in countless sketchbooks and mood boards. I'd created detailed spreadsheets of styling combinations, written extensive notes on color theory and accessory pairing, developed unique techniques for hairstyling with vintage pieces. Melissa had been watching, learning, copying. Every tutorial she posted, every original styling tip she shared, every creative idea she demonstrated, I recognized them all. They were mine. She'd been systematically going through my room, photographing my notebooks, copying my designs, and presenting them to the world as her own genius. When I confronted her, she laughed. "Prove it," she said, 13 years old and already cold as ice. You really think anyone will believe that their favorite influencer stole ideas from her nobody sister? I have millions of followers, Claire. You have what? A couple hundred people who pity follow you? Who do you think people will believe? She was right, of course. I had no proof that would stand up to her word. My notebooks had no dates, no witnesses. It would be my word against hers, and she had the platform, the followers, the money, and our parents' unconditional support. I tried to protect what was left. I started hiding my new designs, keeping my sketchbooks locked away, being more careful about what I left visible in my room. But Melissa was relentless, and my parents gave her free access to everything. Don't be ridiculous, Claire. Your sister isn't stealing from you. She's just inspired by you. You should be flattered. This jealousy is really ugly, Claire. Can't you just be happy for Melissa's success? If you had such good ideas, why aren't you the one with the millions of followers? Maybe you're just not as talented as you think. That last one came from Dad, and it broke something in me that never fully healed. In that life, anyway. The final betrayal came 6 months before I died the first time. I'd been accepted to Parsons School of Design in New York, a full scholarship based on my portfolio. It was my dream, my escape, my chance to finally build something that was mine alone. I was so careful this time. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the application, used a friend's address for the correspondence, kept all the documents locked in a safe deposit box at the bank. But I made one mistake. I mentioned it to my therapist, Dr. Sandra Chen, during a session. I thought patient confidentiality would protect me. I didn't know that Dr. Chen was my mother's college roommate. I didn't know they had lunch together every week. I didn't know that my mother had asked Dr. Chen to take me on as a patient specifically so she could monitor my mental state and make sure I wasn't doing anything to damage Melissa's reputation with my accusations. 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for New York, I came home to find my parents and Melissa sitting in the living room with 2 police officers and a psychiatric social worker. "Claire," Mom said, her voice dripping with concerned sadness, "we're worried about you. Dr. Chen says you've been having delusional episodes, making wild accusations against Melissa, showing signs of severe psychological instability." "That's not, I never—" "She says you've been talking about running away to New York, abandoning your family," Dad added. "That you've been hoarding money and making secret plans. These are signs of a serious mental health crisis, Claire." The social worker stepped forward with paperwork. "Miss Hartley, your family is petitioning for a temporary psychiatric hold. Given Dr. Chen's professional assessment and your parents' testimony, we have no choice but to—" "No!" I backed toward the door, but the police officers moved to block my path. "I'm not crazy. I got into Parsons. I have a scholarship. They're lying because they don't want me to leave." "See?" Melissa's voice was soft, sad, perfectly calibrated for maximum impact. "She's having an episode. She always does this. Creates these elaborate fantasies where she's the victim and we're all villains trying to hold her back. It's heartbreaking." I fought. God, I fought. But what could I do against 2 police officers, a social worker with legal authority, and my entire family united in their lies? They dragged me out of my house screaming, and the last thing I saw was Melissa in the window of my room, the one she'd been angling to take for herself, holding up my phone and smiling. She'd already changed the locks on all my accounts. By the time I was processed into the psychiatric facility, she'd accessed my cloud storage, found my Parsons acceptance letter and all my design, work, and deleted everything. When I finally got my phone back 3 days later, supervised and monitored, my email was gone. My portfolio, years of work, was gone. My acceptance letter, my proof that I wasn't delusional, was gone. And there was nothing I could do. Every protest I made was labeled as paranoid delusions. Every tear I cried was emotional instability. Every moment of anger was violent ideation that required more medication, more restrictions, more isolation. Melissa visited me once 2 months into my stay. She brought me a care package, magazines, snacks, and a new set of hair clips. "I thought these might cheer you up," she said sweetly, while the nurse watched and smiled at what a loving sister she was. Then she leaned in close, her lips barely moving. "The room is perfect now that you're gone. I've been thinking of painting it pink. What do you think? Oh, and thank you for all those designs in your cloud. My followers are going to love the new collection I'm launching next month." I tried to attack her. I actually lunged across the table, hands reaching for her throat, before the orderlies grabbed me and sedated me. That incident added 6 months to my stay and got me labeled as violent and dangerous. The medications they gave me were brutal. They dulled my thoughts, slowed my movements, made me feel like I was living underwater. I was always tired, always foggy, always just a step behind my own consciousness. They said it was necessary, that I was a danger to myself and others, that this was for my own good. I knew what they were really doing. They were erasing me, pill by pill, day by day, until there was nothing left of Claire Hartley except a compliant shell that would never threaten Melissa's empire again. On March 15th, I decided I was done. Not suicide, not really. More like surrender. I'd been saving my medications for weeks, hiding them under my tongue and spitting them out later. I'd accumulated enough for a serious overdose, and I took them all at once with a cup of water and lay down on my narrow bed to wait. I thought about a lot of things as the darkness closed in. I thought about the little girl I'd been, before Melissa was born, when I was still someone's precious daughter. I thought about Dorothy's hair clips and how I'd never gotten to feel that beautiful again. I thought about Parsons and New York and the life I'd almost had. Mostly, I thought about how unfair it was. How Melissa had taken everything, my belongings, my ideas, my future, my freedom, my very identity, and faced no consequences. How she'd won completely, and I'd lost everything, and there was no justice, no karma, no cosmic balance to set things right. My last thought before I died was a desperate, furious wish. If I could do it over, I would do everything differently. I would protect myself. I would fight back. I would make her pay. And then I woke up. The first thing I noticed was the softness of my own bed, my setai, real bed, not the hospital cot. The second was the light streaming through my window, the one that faced east and caught the sunrise. The window I'd given up when Melissa was 5 because she said she needed the bigger room. But I was in that room now, in that bed, and when I sat up and looked around, I saw all my things exactly where they'd been years ago. My vintage vanity with the heart-shaped mirror, my bookshelf full of fashion magazines and design books, my jewelry box on the dresser, still full of hair clips and pins, and all the treasures Melissa hadn't borrowed and lost yet. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand with shaking hands. The date read July 3rd, my 20th birthday. 8 months before the psychiatric hold, 21 months before my death. I had died, and somehow, impossibly, I had been sent back. For a full minute, I just sat there, my mind reeling. This wasn't possible. This violated every law of physics, every rule of reality. But the proof was all around me. My room, my things, my younger body, and the weight of 21 years of memories sitting heavy in my consciousness. A knock on my door made me jump. "Claire, are you up? Melissa wants to know if she can borrow your pearl hair combs for her video today. She's doing a vintage-inspired tutorial." Mom's voice, casual, like this was a normal request. Like she had any right to offer up my belongings to my sister without even asking me first. In my original timeline, I'd said yes. I'd been in a good mood, it was my birthday, and I'd just found out I'd been accepted to the community college design program. I'd let Melissa use the combs and 3 other pieces from my collection. She'd returned 2 of them broken and kept the third, claiming she'd lost it. "No," I called back. Silence. Then, "What?" "I said no. She can't borrow them. She can't borrow anything from me anymore." I heard Mom's sharp intake of breath, then her footsteps retreating down the hall. A moment later, I heard raised voices. Mom and Melissa probably. Let them be upset. Let them be confused. I had 21 months and the advantage of knowing everything that was coming. I wasn't going to waste a single second of it being the family doormat. I got up and went to my closet, pulled out the lockbox I'd bought months ago in this timeline. I remembered now I'd meant to use it but never got around to it. This time, I got around to it immediately. I spent the next 2 hours systematically going through my room and securing everything of value. Jewelry, accessories, sketchbooks, the external hard drive where I'd backed up my design portfolio, my important documents. I was just finishing when Melissa burst into my room without knocking. At 12, she was all long limbs and fake innocence, her eyes wide and wounded. "Claire, what's wrong? Mom said you won't let me borrow your combs. Did I do something to upset you?" Looking at her now, with the full knowledge of what she would become, what she already was, really, made my skin crawl, but I kept my face neutral. "The combs are fragile, Melissa. I don't feel comfortable lending them out anymore." "But I'm always so careful, and I really need them for today's video. Please, Claire. I promise I'll take good care of them." She wouldn't. I knew she wouldn't. In the original timeline, one of the combs had come back with 2 teeth broken off and the pearl inlay cracked. She'd blamed it on a freak accident and never apologized. No. Her expression shifted just for a second, a flash of something cold and calculating before the wounded act resumed. "I don't understand why you're being like this. It's not like you ever use them. You don't even make videos or do anything with your stuff. At least I'm putting it to good use and showing it to people who appreciate it." There it was, the entitlement, the belief that my belongings were wasted on me, that she had more right to them simply because she had an audience. They're mine, Melissa. That's reason enough. You're being so selfish. Her voice rose. It's my birthday too in a few months, and this is how you treat me? I'm your sister. And I'm saying no. You can leave my room now. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. In all her life, I'd never refused her anything significant. I'd always caved, always given in, always put her wants above my needs. This was new territory for both of us. I'm telling Mom, she said finally, her voice small and threatening. Go ahead. She did. Within 5 minutes, both my parents were in my room, and the argument that followed was loud enough that I'm sure the neighbors heard us. Claire, this isn't like you, Dad said, his voice stern. What's gotten into you? I'm setting boundaries. Melissa can use her own accessories for her videos. She's 12 years old. She doesn't have your collection. Mom's face was flushed with anger. You have dozens of beautiful pieces that just sit in your drawer. Would it kill you to share? They're mine. We raised you better than this, Dad said. We raised you to care about family, to be generous and kind. This selfishness is really disappointing, Claire. In my first life, this guilt trip would have worked. I would have caved, apologized, handed over the combs, and probably thrown in a few extra pieces to make up for being difficult. But I'd died once already. I'd lost everything, and I'd be damned if I let it happen again. You know what's disappointing? I said quietly. That my own parents think I need to justify keeping my own belongings. That Melissa can walk into my room without knocking and demand my things, and you back her up. That on my 20th birthday, instead of celebrating with me, you're been here trying to guilt me into giving my stuff to a 12-year-old. Mom's mouth opened and closed. Dad frowned. They looked genuinely confused, like I was speaking a foreign language. It's just hair combs, Claire, Mom said. Finally, why are you making such a big deal out of this? If they're just hair combs, then it shouldn't be a big deal that I'm keeping them. I could see them struggling with the logic, trying to find a way to make me the villain in this scenario. Before they could regroup, I added, I'm going out for the day. Please don't let anyone into my room while I'm gone. I grabbed my bag and walked out, leaving them standing in my doorway looking baffled. The next few weeks were enlightening. Every time Melissa asked to borrow something, I said no. Every time my parents tried to guilt me into sharing, I held firm. It was exhausting. The constant battles, the accusations of selfishness, the way they looked at me like I'd become a stranger. But I also watched carefully. I paid attention to Melissa's channel, to the content she was posting. In the original timeline, she'd just been starting to incorporate borrowed elements from my collection into her videos. This time, without access to my things, her content was noticeably less polished. Her view counts stayed steady, but stopped growing at the meteoric rate I remembered. I also started documenting everything. Every design I created, I photographed with a timestamp. Every idea I sketched, I logged in a digital journal with dates and metadata. I opened a new cloud account that no one in my family knew about and backed everything up there. I even started a private Instagram account under a pseudonym where I posted my work-in-progress shots, public proof of my creative process that was time-stamped and verifiable. I was building a paper trail because I knew what was coming. In the original timeline, Melissa's big break had come when she was 14, 6 months from now, in this revised timeline. A major beauty brand had reached out to collaborate with her, impressed by her unique vintage modern aesthetic and her incredible creativity. The collaboration had launched her from influencer to entrepreneur, and by 15, she'd had her own product line. I knew now that the aesthetic they'd been impressed by was mine. The creativity was mine. Everything that had made her special and marketable had been stolen from me. This time, I was going to make sure the world knew the truth. But first, I needed to deal with the immediate threat, my parents' growing resentment of my new attitude. In the original timeline, their frustration with my boundaries had been part of what made them receptive to Dr. Chen's suggestion that I needed psychiatric evaluation. They'd seen my protectiveness of my belongings, my refusal to share, my anger at Melissa's borrowing as signs of mental instability rather than reasonable self-protection. I needed to change that narrative before it could take root. So I made an appointment with a different therapist, Dr. Marcus Washington, a man with no connection to my family and a stellar reputation for treating family dysfunction. I booked it through my college's health services so my parents couldn't access the records. I need you to document something for me, I told him in our first session. I need an official record that I'm of sound mind, that I understand reality clearly, and that the boundaries I'm setting with my family are healthy and appropriate. Dr. Washington, to his credit, didn't question the unusual request. He just listened as I explained the situation, carefully edited to remove the whole "I died and came back" aspect. And at the end of our session, he did exactly what I asked. He wrote a detailed letter documenting my mental health status, my clear understanding of reality, and his professional opinion that my boundary setting was not only appropriate but necessary for my well-being. I put that letter in my safe deposit box at the bank, along with copies of my design work and my Parsons application materials. I was building a fortress around myself, one document at a time. The real turning point came 4 months into my second life, on Halloween. Melissa was 13 now and preparing for what would have been, in the original timeline, her biggest video yet: Vintage Glamour Halloween Tutorial. In that version, she'd used more than a dozen pieces from my collection, including a rare Victorian mourning brooch that had been Dorothy's most precious piece. The video had gone viral, gotten her 200,000 new followers in a week, and led directly to the brand collaboration. The brooch had been returned to me scratched and with a broken clasp. When I'd complained, Melissa had cried and said I was being mean to her on purpose because I was jealous of her success. My parents had sided with her, of course. This time, when she asked to borrow pieces for the video, I said no. "But Claire," she whined, "this is really important. It could be my biggest video ever. Don't you want to help me succeed?" "Use your own stuff, Melissa. I don't have anything as nice as yours. Please, I'll give you a shout out in the video. I'll even pay you." That was new. In the original timeline, she'd never offered payment because she'd never had to. I'd always just given in. "No, Melissa, my answer is final." She tried everything. Tears, tantrums, getting mom and dad involved, even offering me a percentage of the video's ad revenue. But I held firm, and eventually she had to film her Halloween video with her own, much more pedestrian accessories. The video did okay, got her usual views, usual engagement, but it didn't go viral. It didn't break the algorithm. It was just fine. I, meanwhile, had been working on something else. I'd started my own private portfolio, not for social media, but for my Parsons application. I was getting ahead of schedule this time, making sure every piece was documented and backed up in multiple places. I wasn't taking any chances. But I'd also been doing something more immediately satisfying. Remember how I mentioned Melissa had been systematically photographing my notebooks and copying my designs? Well, this time I knew she was doing it. And this time I set a trap. I left a notebook out, a really beautiful one, full of detailed sketches and styling ideas, all of them original and eye-catching, and exactly the kind of thing Melissa would covet. I even left it open to a particularly stunning page, a complete styling guide for a Victorian Gothic Christmas theme with detailed notes on hair, makeup, accessories, and photography. I knew she'd find it. I knew she'd photograph it. And I knew exactly when she'd use it, for her Christmas special video, which would be filmed in mid-December. What Melissa didn't know was that I'd also posted every single one of those designs to my private Instagram account, the one under my pseudonym 2 months earlier. Time-stamped, dated, with progress shots showing my creative process. I just had to wait. December arrived and Melissa began hyping her Christmas special. "My most ambitious video yet," she tweeted. "Vintage Victorian glamour meets Gothic romance. Can't wait to share this with you all." I watched her film it over the course of a week. Watched her recreate every single detail from the notebook I'd left out. The hairstyle, the makeup look, the color palette, the photography style, everything. She posted it on December 18th. Within 6 hours, it had 500,000 views. By the next morning, it had 2 million and was trending on YouTube. Comments flooded in. "This is your best work yet. Your creativity is unmatched. How do you come up with these ideas?" I waited 3 more days. Let the video get to 5 million views. Let Melissa bask in the glory. Let her start bragging about how this was proof she was a real artist, how she'd created something truly special. And then, On December 21st, I made my move. I created a new Twitter account under my own name, at Claire Chartley. I posted a thread with receipts. Hi everyone, my name is Claire Hartley. You might not know me, but you probably know my sister, at Melissa Magical. I need to tell you something important about her original content. I attached screenshots. My Instagram post from October, showing the Victorian Gothic Christmas designs in various stages of development. Melissa's video from December, showing identical designs fully executed. Side-by-side comparisons with timestamps clearly visible. This isn't the first time, I continued. For 2 years, my sister has been taking my designs, my ideas, my creative work, and passing it off as her own. She's been systematically stealing from me and building her entire brand on my stolen intellectual property. I posted more screenshots, notebooks with dates, sketches with timestamps, metadata from my files proving I'd created them months or years before Melissa used them. A detailed timeline showing the pattern of theft. I'm not doing this for attention, I wrote. I'm not trying to destroy her. I just want people to know the truth. The creativity you've been admiring isn't hers. It's mine. It's always been mine. I hit post and waited. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then someone with 50,000 followers retweeted it. Then someone with 200,000. Then a commentary channel made a video about it. By morning, it was everywhere. Melissa Magical Exposed was trending. Commentary channels were doing deep dives, comparing Melissa's old videos to my dated Instagram posts and finding pattern after pattern of identical designs showing up in her content weeks or months after I'd posted them. Art theft experts weighed in. Copyright lawyers offered analysis. The beauty community, which had embraced Melissa as one of their own, felt betrayed and angry. Melissa's response was exactly what I expected. She posted a tearful video. I can't believe my own sister is trying to destroy me out of jealousy. Yes, we share ideas sometimes. We're family. We grew up together. Of course, our aesthetics are similar. But to accuse me of stealing when she knows I work so hard on my content, it's just cruel. It might have worked, except I'd been thorough. I'd documented everything. The timestamps didn't lie. The progression of my Instagram posts showed clear creative development, while Melissa's content showed finished products appearing suddenly with no progression. Several graphic designers did detailed analyses showing that some of Melissa's thumbnails were literally traced from my sketches. The evidence was overwhelming. Within 48 hours, Melissa had lost 300,000 followers. Brand deals started falling through. YouTube demonetized several of her videos pending investigation. And the beauty brand that was supposed to reach out to her for that career-making collaboration? They released a statement saying they would not be working with creators who engaged in intellectual property theft. My parents predictably blamed me. How could you do this to your sister? Mom screamed. You've destroyed her career. You've ruined her life. Over what, some hair accessories and drawings? She stole from me, I said calmly. For years. I have proof. The entire internet has seen the proof. She's 13 years old, Claire. She's a child. You're an adult. You should have handled this privately, not publicly humiliated her. I tried handling it privately. You called me selfish and mean. You took her side every single time. This is the consequence of protecting a thief instead of teaching her to respect other people's belongings. Dad pointed at the door in a "Get out, I don't want to see you right now. You've done enough damage to this family." I'd been expecting this too. I'd already packed a bag, already arranged to stay with my friend Rachel, already transferred money to an account they couldn't access. I picked up my prepared bag from behind the couch. Yes, I'd brought it down that morning knowing this was coming, and walked out. As I left, I heard Melissa screaming from her room, a sound of pure rage and frustration. Good. Let her feel a fraction of what I'd felt in that psychiatric facility. Let her experience what it was like to lose everything. The next few months were challenging but liberating. I worked full-time at a coffee shop, shared an apartment with Rachel, and poured every spare moment into my design work. Without the constant stress of my family, I flourished. My portfolio grew stronger. My style became more refined. In February, I submitted my application to Parsons. I used Dr. Washington as a reference. I included a letter explaining the situation with my sister and my family, along with copies of all my documentation proving my work was original. I was honest about the public nature of the scandal and how it had led to me being estranged from my family. I got in, full scholarship just like in the original timeline. But this time, no one could take it away from me. The acceptance letter came in April, 3 weeks before the psychiatric hold would have happened in my original timeline. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for my family to somehow find a way to sabotage this like they had before. But Dr. Washington's documentation of my sound mental health, combined with the very public evidence that my family had been enabling theft, meant that any attempt they made to paint me as unstable would be seen for exactly what it was: retaliation. They didn't try. Maybe they knew they'd already lost. Maybe they were too busy dealing with the aftermath of Melissa's exposed plagiarism. Or maybe, on some level, they finally realized they'd gone too far. I didn't care which it was. I was free. But this isn't where the story ends. That would be too simple, too easy. Because in May, something unexpected happened: the unfair advantage. I didn't know I had revealed itself. I was at the bank, checking my safe deposit box, when the manager approached me. "Miss Hartley, there's someone here who'd like to speak with you. A Mrs. Dorothy Chen?" My heart stopped. Dorothy Chen. The same name as the woman who'd owned the vintage hair clips, the ones I'd bought at the estate sale all those years ago. But that Dorothy had died. That's why her things were sold, unless... I followed the manager to a private office where an elderly Asian woman sat waiting. She was elegant, probably in her 70s, with silver hair styled in a classic chignon and wearing a vintage Chanel suit. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "You're really Claire," she said. "You're really my granddaughter." The story came out slowly, carefully. Dorothy Chen, not the dancer from the estate sale, but my grandmother on my father's side, had been estranged from my dad for 20 years, ever since he'd married my mother against her wishes. She tried to maintain contact with me when I was little, but my mother had forbidden it, eventually moving us across the country to make sure Dorothy couldn't see me. But Dorothy had never stopped watching from, afar. She'd hired investigators, kept track of my life, waited for the day I'd be old enough to seek her out on my own. She'd even arranged for some of her vintage accessories to be sold at that estate sale when she heard I'd gotten a job and was saving up, a way to get something of hers into my hands without violating the restraining order my mother had taken out against her. "I saw what happened with your sister," she said. "The plagiarism scandal. I saw you stand up for yourself and leave that toxic house. And I thought, maybe now you'd be willing to hear from me." "Why did my mother hate you so much?" I asked. Dorothy smiled sadly. "Because I saw her for what she was from the beginning. A narcissist who wanted your father's money and social position. I tried to warn him, and she made sure I paid for it by taking away the grandchild I'd only just met. Your father chose her over me. I've regretted not fighting harder for you every day since." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You're going to Parsons in the fall. Let me help. Let me give you what your parents should have given you: support, encouragement, and the resources to succeed. Let me finally be the grandmother I should have been all along. I could have said no, could have been suspicious, kept her at arm's length, protected myself from another potential betrayal. But something in her eyes reminded me of those vintage hair clips, of Dorothy the dancer who'd lived in New York and had adventures and created a life that was wholly her own. And I thought, maybe this is what the universe gave me in exchange for dying once. A second chance, yes, but also a person who actually saw me and valued me for who I was. "I'd like that," I said. Grandmother, I learned to call her Dorothy, which she preferred, wasn't just supportive. She was wealthy, very wealthy. Old money combined with decades of savvy investments meant she could write a check for my entire 4 years at Parsons without feeling it. But more than that, she had connections. She introduced me to designers, stylists, photographers. She took me to shows during Fashion Week. She treated my dreams with respect and my talent with pride. For the first time in my life, I had an adult in my corner who believed in me without condition. Meanwhile, Melissa's career never recovered. Oh, she tried. She rebranded, apologized, claimed she'd learned and grown. She started posting again with content that was supposedly all her own. But the views never came back to previous levels. The trust was broken. Once people knew she was a thief, they couldn't unsee it. Every video she posted was scrutinized for signs of plagiarism compared to other creators' work, picked apart by thousands of suspicious eyes. By the time I left for New York in August, she'd dwindled to 400,000 followers, less than a third of her peak, and was barely making enough from YouTube to cover her equipment costs. Mom had to get a second job to make up for the lost income they'd been relying on. I didn't feel bad about it. Which brings us back to where we started. Me standing in my childhood bedroom, my head shaved, watching my sister realize I'd donated every single accessory I owned. But there's more to that story. See, after I moved in with Rachel all those months ago, I did eventually go back to the house. Once, when my parents were at work and Melissa was at school, I packed up everything I'd left behind, my clothes, my books, my design materials. And yes, my hair accessories. I didn't actually donate them all. That would have been a waste. Dorothy had taught me better than that. What I did was carefully catalog every piece, photograph them extensively, and put them in storage. Then I bought cheap replicas of the most visible items and put those in my jewelry box. The kind of replicas that looked fine from a distance but were obviously fake up close. I knew Melissa would eventually find a way into my room. I knew she'd go through my things, looking for anything she could use to restore her fading relevance. And I knew that when she did, she'd take the replicas thinking they were real, use them in her videos, and get called out by her remaining followers for using fake accessories while claiming they were vintage, which is exactly what happened. In March, 1 full year after my death in the original timeline, Melissa posted a Return to Vintage Glamour video featuring several pieces from Claire's collection, which she's graciously letting me use. The pearl combs, the crystal pins, the Victorian brooch, all the pieces her followers remembered from her glory days. Except these weren't the real pieces. And her followers, who'd become experts at spotting inconsistencies in her content, noticed immediately. Those are fake. The pearl inlay is plastic. That brooch is from Amazon. I have the same one. Is she really trying to pass off replicas as vintage? Has she learned nothing? The comments were brutal. The video got ratioed so hard that Melissa eventually deleted it. But the screenshots lived forever, shared and reshared across platforms, as proof that Melissa Hartley was not just a plagiarist, but a fraud in every possible way. My parents tried one last time to intervene. They showed up at Dorothy's apartment where I was staying for spring break, with Melissa in tow, demanding I fix this. "Claire, you have to post something," Mom insisted. "Tell people those were the real accessories, that you really did lend them to her. You've already destroyed her once. Do you have to keep doing it?" "I'm not doing anything," I said calmly. "Melissa destroyed herself by using obviously fake pieces and lying about them. That's not my responsibility. We're your family." Dad's face was red. "Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Dorothy appeared behind me, regal and imposing. "Funny you should mention family, Richard. You certainly didn't think it meant anything when you chose your narcissistic wife over your own mother. When you let her take out a restraining order against me to keep me from my granddaughter. When you stood by while your youngest daughter systematically stole from and abused your eldest. Family means something when it's convenient for you, doesn't it?" My father flinched like he'd been struck. Melissa started crying, real tears this time, I think. She'd finally realized that her tears didn't work on everyone. "Claire, please," she said. I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry for everything I did. I was young and stupid and jealous, and I made terrible choices. But I'm your sister. Doesn't that matter? Don't you remember when we were little and you loved me?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, no lingering love, just a vast, empty indifference. "I did love you, Melissa. I loved you so much that I let you destroy me. But I died in the life you created for me, maybe not physically in your timeline, but I was dead in every way that mattered. And when I came back, I decided I wasn't going to love people who treated me like an object that exists solely for their use. So, no, it doesn't matter that you're my sister. You stopped being my sister when you chose theft over respect, lies over honesty, and your success over my well-being." I closed the door in their faces and never looked back. Parsons was everything I'd dreamed of and more. I thrived in New York, surrounded by people who understood creativity and respected intellectual property. I made real friends, had genuine mentors, and built a portfolio I was proud of. By my junior year, I'd started getting attention from major fashion houses. My senior collection was featured in Vogue. After graduation, I was offered a position as a junior designer at Alexander McQueen. Dorothy lived to see me succeed. She died peacefully in her sleep 2 months after my graduation, and she left me everything: the apartment in Manhattan, the house in the Hamptons, the investment portfolio worth millions. But more than that, she left me the knowledge that I was loved, truly loved, for exactly who I was. In her will, she'd written, "To Claire, who survived what should have destroyed her and became extraordinary not despite her struggles, but because of how she chose to face them. You were always the strong one, my darling. I'm so proud to have known you." As for Melissa, last I heard she's working retail at a mall in Seattle. Her channel still exists, but she hasn't posted in over a year. She has 150,000 followers left, mostly dead accounts and bots. Mom and Dad divorced 2 years ago, once the money dried up, and they had nothing left to unite them except their mutual resentment that their golden child turned out to be pyrite. Sometimes I think about reaching out, about offering some kind of reconciliation. Then I remember the psychiatric facility. I remember the medications that made me feel like a ghost. I remember dying alone and hopeless because they'd taken absolutely everything from me. And I decide I'm good. I'm 31 now in this life, 11 years older than I was when I died the first time. I'm a senior designer at McQueen. I have an apartment with a view of Central Park. I have friends who value me and colleagues who respect me. I have Dorothy's vintage hair clips, the real ones, displayed in a glass case in my bedroom, a reminder of where I started and how far I've come. And my head? I grew my hair back after that first defiant shave, but I keep it short now. Pixie cut, easy to maintain, and absolutely no need for elaborate vintage accessories. It's practical, modern, and entirely mine. Every morning when I look in the mirror, I remember Melissa's face when she realized I'd taken away the one thing she'd relied on for her entire identity. I remember my mother's shock when I refused to be guilted. I remember my father's confusion when I walked out of their house for the last time. And I smile. Because I won. Not just against them, but against death itself. I got a second chance, and I used it to build a life that's completely, beautifully, triumphantly mine. They took everything from me once. But I made damn sure they could never do it again. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it feels absolutely perfect. Epilogue. Last week, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "From Melissa." I almost deleted it without opening. But curiosity got the better of me. "Claire," it read, "I know I have no right to contact you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your time. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did to you. I'm in therapy. Real therapy. Not like what they did to you. I'm working on myself. I've apologized publicly for the plagiarism. I've tried to make amends where I can. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to have a relationship with me. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. You deserved so much better than what I gave you, what we all gave you. I saw your collection at Fashion Week last month. It was beautiful. You're incredibly talented. You always were. I'm glad you made it, Claire. I'm glad one of us got to be happy. I hope you're well. I hope you're everything you wanted to be. Your sister, if you'll still let me call myself that. Melissa." I read it 3 times. Tried to find the manipulation, the angle, the hidden request. But it seemed sincere. Melissa was 33 years old now, not the 13-year-old girl who'd stolen my designs. Maybe she really had changed. Maybe therapy had helped her see what she'd done. I thought about responding, about offering some kind of olive branch, some acknowledgement that people can grow and change. Then I thought, no. She apologized, and that's good. Growth is good. But I don't owe her forgiveness just because she finally developed a conscience. I don't owe her a place in Changxia. My life just because we share DNA. Some wounds don't heal, and some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. I deleted the email and went back to work on my next collection, because that's the real ending, the real victory. Not that Melissa finally said she was sorry, but that I no longer needed her to. She's a character in my origin story, nothing more. The villain whose actions forced the hero to become strong. And me? I'm not the hero of a revenge story anymore. I'm the protagonist of my own life, a life I died for and fought for and built from nothing. A life that's mine in every possible way. Melissa borrowed my hair clips every day, and after Rebirth, I shaved my head and she had nothing. But the real revelation wasn't that I took away her props. It was that I never needed them either. I just needed to be free.